All right, I got a email here from Gary Northington on jpay.com. It was written on the 5th of May, 2018. Let's go ahead and read it. By the way, Gary Northington's charges were conspiracy to murder. He's spending life in prison, and he's been in there 31 years. Officer Jack McLamb advocated for him when Officer Jack McLamb was alive. Dear Rudy, Jack McLamb was a friend for over 20 years, until his transfer to heaven. He was a good man who was considerate and loving of all. He was a true patriot. I realized upon first hearing Jack that he knew a lot about what is now called the deep state, which I always called the de facto government, or shadow government, prior to 2016. I have his last book, OVK 2000. I didn't know Jack McLamb wrote a book. I'll have to look that up. OVK, Oscar Victor King 2000. I first met Jack on a homebrew SW made from a Panasonic AM/FM that was gone 9 years ago. In the AM, I added a band switch and 4 oscillator coils, then rewound and taped the antenna to cover from 0.4 to 40 megahertz. The FM was modified to cover from 50 to 450 megahertz. It also had a 1-watt 6 by 12 meter transmitter built from scratch, so it was a two-way. I know Carol Asher through Jack. Carol is a wonderful lady who often responded to me for the Aid in a Bed crew. If you don't know, Aid in a Bed is a newsletter that Officer Jack McLamb put out, and he wrote various articles about political prisoners, including Yori Call. When I ordered publications and wrote to them, she always let us know we are not forgotten. Jack picked good persons to have around him as friends. Carol is one of them. I was raised in an ultra-conservative Christian church and never saw a TV until around 13 years old. I was born again on my birthday in 1979 with the peace and joy of being saved. I've been far from perfect, which makes me very thankful for the Lord's forgiveness, but I keep on running the race for the prize. My first gospel song, A New Beginning, sent by Snail, says how I feel. The chorus goes, and oh, I love the God life in me, the promise that the Spirit gives. Today His love within my heart forevermore, the promise of a brand new life His way. Regarding the Michigan element of my case, I fell in the group tied to local politicians of Monroe, Michigan. In July 1986, I had just arrived at location of a killing and heard statements of the one who put a bullet in another's head by shooting through the back window of the decedent's car. The shooter explained this to me just before Chief County Prosecutor Fry arrived at the scene. Upon arrival, Chief Prosecutor William D. Fry said, "Let's go someplace more private." I went to get a pop and unintentionally walked in the prosecutor's conversation. I went to get a pop and unintentionally walked in on the prosecutor's conversation. After the shooter described his act, Fry said, "The broken glass in his car will show that you shot him from the outside. Since you had a .38 and he had a 7mm, the bullet in his head will show he did not shoot himself." More conversation, I can't recall about the same. Fry continued, "I can make it look like a suicide. The coroner owes me $1. It'll cost about $2,000. The shooter responded, "I've only got $300 on hand. I can get more at the bank on Monday." Fry said, "That'll get us for now." Discussed making it look like a suicide and then said, "Who knows, you might even get something out of this." Regarding what became any lawful payment, a Michigan State Police group, the something was an award of some sort for the shooter. In October 1986, I was a witness to Prosecutor Fry describing his intended arrest of an enemy of the shooter. Fry said, "I'll get him up to Ypsi State Mental Hospital and pump him so full of drugs he won't know who he is when he gets out. I'll call James Rostash to see if he'll be his public defender." The guy was arrested but got saved from Ypsi by paying for a private attorney. On the 7th or 8th January 1987, someone put Dursban 4E in a glass, kept on my kitchen counter from which I usually drank water. The only person I knew to have Dursban 4E was the July 1986 shooter. On January the 8th, 1987, around 0500 hours, I drank from the glass before knowing what was in it. I got into my car, drove a few miles, then everything flashed white. I made it back home and passed out for hours. Sometime thereafter, I began working on a business project on a bench in a windowless room when everything flashed white. I said to myself, what's going on here? Then turned to see a blue jean jacket with plaid lining like the shooter usually wore, then blacked out. Upon becoming conscious, I was laying in a pool of water with an electrical cord laying on my chest. Thereafter, James Rostash became special prosecutor at my trial when Fry was disqualified. Rostash was the chief prosecutor before Fry. I started investigation of the Monroe, Michigan corruption by telling the honest sheriff where to find the evidence. This led to the discovery of an unlawful $30,000 payment between Fry and Rostash during my criminal trial. That $30,000 led to disbarment of Fry and 180 days of suspension for Rostash. Grievance Administrator versus Rostash, 457 Michigan 289, 1999. In 1990, my conviction was reversed for deliberate misconduct of Special Prosecutor James Rostash. The misconduct got me a retrial with a public defender and judge bought and paid for by Prosecutor Fry. I was broke after the first trial. On October the 10th, 1990, James Rostash's quasi-partner, Gregory Jones, paid $4,000 bribe to visiting Judge Michael J. Talbot. In Talbot's chambers, Jones handed a manila envelope to Talbot while saying, "Here are a couple thousand reasons to decide for the prosecutor." Talbot took the envelope, pulled out 3 bundles of Federal Reserve note bills, and said, "Couple thousand." Jones said, "More like 4,000. What was strange about this was that Monroe County Deputy Sheriff Fred Bedford had placed me in the courtroom in the exact place where I could see through the cracked door of Judge Talbot's chambers, while Jones and Talbot acted as if they did not see me. Drop a pin could have been heard in the quiet courtroom. Deputy Bedford had removed my handcuffs and left me alone in the courtroom for 30 minutes while he went elsewhere. This resembled months earlier when he left me alone in the police car with the door open and engine running. What's up here? Through all of this, I have not lost trust in Jesus. Don't worry about those who can destroy the body. God bless. Okay, this is going to be placed on a Year of Jubilee. If you want a copy of it, let me know, and I'll make sure you get a copy of it. This is our... we're getting many letters from Gary Northington, who spent 31 years in prison. Many believe that he's innocent.